Good evening. It's March 9th. It's Sunday, March 9th in Japan. And it's in the evening. And no, it's in the morning in the United States. And it's the same day in Israel. I hope that people had peaceful Shabbat in Israel, and not just Israel, my friends in the United States. By the way, before start speaking, please download my podcast. Talk about my podcast with your friends, and also visit my homepage because I will be posting, and I have posted my blog posts. Anyway, it's March 8th. It's March 9th. But March 8th was the 50th anniversary of the International Women's Day. So the first International Women's Day was 1975. A lot of feminists have worked on it. Thinking of 2025, I would like to talk about Israeli women. It's not just because the government has been talking about it, but like when we speak of International Women's Day, Japan, it seems like Japan does not care about Israeli women's rape cases at all, really, seriously, in any news sources. They do not talk about it. And there was an NGO of the Jewish organization that condemned that part. Officially, they did condemn the Japanese media's lack of awareness against Hamas's rapes against women, Israeli women, I have to say. Well, even I would like to refrain from talking about the exact name and what happened at the same time. Like, I would talk about, for example, like Shani Luke, but I don't want to tell anymore what happened to her because it's all over the media. And she has been discussed, photographed, and even this photo of her naked body at the back of the pickup truck. Her backbone was broken with Hamas posing. That became the photo of the year. That's the journalism. I mean, what kind of low is that? And this year is, for example, International Women's Day, commemorating 50th year. Nobody talks about the rapes of Israeli women. Well, it's like, we're not going to talk about it, right? Because they're Israelis, they're Zionists. And I am just appalled at the fact that people think that it's okay to argue that Zionists do not have to have the right to live. Well, they do have the right to live, of course, as human. And if Zionists are not participating in this kind of shouting match, but it's like, Zionists, for example, most of the Zionists, I have to say 90% of Israelis are Zionists. More than that. I was telling my friends about Israelis the other day, and I realized that she does not know about Israel. But anyway, she's not Jewish and she's not Israeli. But Zionists have no right to live. Well, that's the narrative of the pro-Hamas protesters. And thank goodness, there's a good news. Now, Columbia University is losing national funding, signed by Trump. President Trump made the right decision. I mean, why do national funding go to the universities that allow terrorism and sponsor of terrorism? And not just that, but they do not study, and also they're engaged in protesting. And not just protesting, but they are supporting Hamas, and they are proud of it. And the university does not stop it, means that they support the activities of the students. They have to do something about it. But they are not doing anything right now. But I thought of March 8th, the International Women's Day. And also, it was Shabbat. Just this weekend. And October 7th, I've seen a photo, at least, of Nir Oz Base. Young female soldiers taking photos of Shabbat dinner. And that was the last time the photo was taken. How do you feel if you were the parents of the female soldiers? How do you feel if you were the parents of the young girls who participated in the Nova Music Festival? And the United Nations did not have any words on March 8th or March 9th, any day, time frame, I guess. I have to say time zone during the International Women's Day. They have nothing to say, according to them. Meanwhile, UN chief, this famous man, was in Assad's presidential palace. Well, Assad is not the president of Syria anymore. He's a refugee in Russia. That's a funny part. But anyway, he was meeting this radical Islamist, the UN chief. Is that humane to do it? There has been slaughters by the Syrian regime. Alawites and Christians are slaughtered by the Syrian regime. And Guterres is shaking hands with the leader of Syria. What kind of sense is that? And we have to say the United Nations is the only international organization that has the right to decide what's right and wrong. Well, there should be a criteria. Okay, I will talk about ICC, because I will not be a part of the court and I will not be in the courtroom screaming or whatsoever. So I will be talking a little bit about ICC here. It's pretty disappointing that the Japanese government is in the position of policing the world order in a sense, I have to say, because they keep saying there has to be law and order under the international law. So, in a sense, that means that Japan has the right to create a new law and order. Why do they say such a thing? I mean, even as a Japanese, it's very audacious, and in a sense, it's very ludicrous. And it's not just that, but okay, Karim Khan, he's the problem. He has not just allegations, but he is blamed for sexual assault against women, and he is the prosecutor, right? But he is saying, okay, don't just tell me that, don't tell others or the press that I committed sexual crimes against you. He is harassing women in that manner. Well, that is International Women's Day by the United Nations. But I really feel resentment against the Japanese positions against ICJ and both and ICC, especially ICC. I really resent the arrest warrants that Karim Khan issued against Prime Minister Netanyahu and the former Defense Minister Gallant. Well, it's something the Japanese media have been promoting, which is IDF is intentionally killing the civilians. It's a war crime because ICC says so, right? That's their position. And that's the Japanese media's position. And they say, as if it were the truth, it is not the truth that the media are saying, but they are actually propagating the facts. For example, here's the fact that the Japanese media were always talking. Like, under the rubbles, there were dead bodies with hands tied in the back. Oh, this is from Al Jazeera, right? Found in order, placed in order. And this must have been committed by the IDF. Well, to me, it sounds very clear that that's what Hamas does and did. And Hamas has been doing that in Gaza. It's a moment that what Hamas has been doing became clear. It is not the actions of the IDF. And one reason that they say is that they want to justify that they have been investigating the IDF since 2015 or something, huh? Well, since 2015, the Al Jazeera would like to say, well, the dead body must have become the skeleton. Well, I cannot laugh about it, but Hamas, Islamic Jihad, radical Islamists in Gaza, they are torturing the civilians as they did in 2015, tied people up in the back and shot them in the head. And what Hamas did to Hirsch, for example, the former hostage and the victim, Israeli victim of Nova Music Festival, he was tied up and shot in the head. That was execution. And that is called execution. Hamas intentionally executed Israeli hostages before the IDF came to save them. Intentionally. And the Japanese media do not talk about Israel. Like, they just say the situation in Gaza. They do not mention the IDF or Israel, even Netanyahu, as they wanted to say. Oh, the Netanyahu dictator, right? They wanted to say that, right? And the right-wing government, blah, blah, blah. Well, worse than that. Well, worse, I would say the left-wing government is probably the worst of the worst. Well, just look at ICC and Karim Khan, and not just that, look at the media, the Japanese media. They are representing the worst of the worst in the world. And now they are talking seriously about President Trump being a dictator of the New World Order. Inviting University of Tokyo professor, right? I wonder what their conclusion would be. But Prime Minister Abe was not wrong in any sense about increasing defense budget to 2% at least of GDP. And that is the minimum requirement right now. And also not just that, but I would say that Prime Minister Ishiba's policy towards defense and also, in a sense, diplomacy, I am not sure how much he's thinking right now, but well, his summit at the White House, President Trump welcomed him and hosted in a friendly manner. And President Trump was very generous to Japan. That is true. And the Japanese media have been in a narrative that, for example, like President Trump is the dictator and loves Russia. Well, I would probably say as the time when I discussed Prime Minister Kishida, meaning Prime Minister Kishida is supposed to be the Prime Minister of Japan, but he was not acting as the Prime Minister of Japan at the time, unfortunately. This is not a cynical opinion. He was not representing Japan at all. And what was he doing? He was representing somewhere else. And I would say, if a leader of a nation has to take responsibility for the nation, they need to have the guts to do it in the first place. And Prime Minister Kishida was like a babysitter. I think that a lot of people understand whom I'm talking about. But whom I'm talking about is the real issue right now. Well, it was good that Prime Minister Ishiba did not act as somebody like scream in front of the president and the vice president just stops. That was the situation. And then what? The Japanese media says, well, the vice president was exceptional. And he started to just say, pointing at blah. Well, I don't want to talk further about it, but the fact was that the vice president stopped the screaming. And it is not about the screaming, it is actually not about the screaming. Well, I'm not saying that I will probably most likely would like to say that the person who was screaming at President Trump did not represent the nation, unfortunately. And I don't like Putin or Lavrov or whatever. I have never liked Putin for a very long time. I don't have to even mention that. But if I talk about this person who screamed at President Trump, it was like I was defending Putin. I'm not defending Putin, of course not. And I just don't defend the person who screamed at Trump. And, well, a lot of people who only saw the Japanese media and did not understand the conversation between President Trump, Vice President, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the other person who screamed at President Trump. Well, he is the hero, right? Like, what? I don't want to further discuss this person, really. I don't even want to call the name or talk about this person. I mean, he's lying. It is not about the country, okay? But he is lying. He himself. I'm not talking about President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, or Secretary of State. I did not want to talk about this for a long time, but he is lying. Indeed. To the public. Yeah, I really do not want to talk about this, but anyway, going back to ICC. I will go back to ICC. The arrest warrants were, of course, against Hamas. But what the Japanese media did not mention was the part that the reason why Netanyahu has been prosecuted. They were prosecuted because they failed to defend the nation. I mean, that is the first time I have ever heard a leader of a nation prosecuted because they failed to defend the nation. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness. If they failed to defend the nation, that's your fault. I mean, that's like, well, protecting the dictatorship. I mean, Karim Khan, of course. I mean, here's the nature of him. He defends the dictators. Well, now, yeah, he meets the leader of Syria. Yeah, of course he does, because he gets along with him. I mean, he does not support any of the weaker nation or the rights of the people or rights of the nation. He is on behalf of the dictatorship, meaning he does not even intend to probably defend Taiwan. And regarding Taiwan, I think that the only nation that would not just find the benefit, but support Taiwan would be the United States. And now the Japanese media are attacking the United States, which is crazy. You know what? President Trump is not talking about whether the defense of Taiwan is an interest of him or not. I mean, it's not about him or not, but it does matter what is going to happen. Of course it does. But the way the media discuss, I'm just so disgusted all the time, every time. They lied about the prosecution, the arrest warrants, the content of the arrest warrants against Bibi Netanyahu and now the citizen and defense minister Gallant. And what? The media now were campaigning that, they just quote and say, well, Al Jazeera says that the IDF is intentionally attacking the citizens. Well, that's what Hamas did, and that's what Hamas has been doing. And who elected Hamas? Actually, the Gazans. And the hostages' testimonies show what they did, the Gazans did to the hostages. They were throwing stones. Well, as the president of the United States stated, they did not share bread with the hostages. Terrible. Even as a Japanese, I would say that with not just hostages, but some people, of course, shared meals with I have to say, not war criminals, but it's a very inappropriate term to use. But I would say the Japanese army did have more morality than Gazans. And the Japanese media are in support of Palestinians, right? Okay, I also, when I think of International Women's Day, I still remember what PA authority, the female diplomat from the PA authority stated. They say that, she said that we have to investigate this case because there are a lot of allegations. There are forensic evidence, and it turns out that PA authorities have means to turn the evidence over into something else, right? That is just abhorrent. And that is what Israel has been facing for more than 70 years. And I don't exactly understand what the Japanese media have been doing, because they did not know about what happened on October 7th, on the morning of October 7th, I have to say. It was a long hour of silence. No news media talked about what happened. And even now, they're not talking about it. And now, what happens is that ICC is the law and order, and now we have to blame Prime Minister Netanyahu because he failed to defend the nation, and he failed to prevent Hamas. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, nobody has the right to attack the country in the first place. I mean, Israel is the country. Whatever. You know, these Hamas supporting imams, they say Zionists, blah, blah, blah. That's a reasoning. Zionists or whatever have the right to live. And now I am appalled how many of these imams exist in the Western nations, stating that they are going to colonize the Western countries, right? I think that it's past time that somebody stops all these pro-Hamas protests on campus. And President Trump made the right decision. And nobody, President Trump is not discussing Taiwan as Japanese media are discussing. I don't understand what their mindset is in the first place. Like, they're like aliens to me, okay? Really. I don't understand what they are. I do watch the Japanese news, but I do not watch them as the source of information, especially on international news, because it's about like 3 days late or something. Like, I hear maybe like 30 times, and then the Japanese media start to say something. But anyway, it's not accurate, and what is more, they support dictatorship. Sad. But I hope that, well, I was thinking of International Women's Day, by the way, and I start to remember a lot of women did not have the next Shabbat after October 7th, especially the young women. And not just young women, even Holocaust survivors. Anyway, in May, there's a hopeful event for me in Israel. And it's something that that has to do with me. But unfortunately, I won't be present. But I will be in Israel sometime after the war, of course. But anyway, I hope that you have a good evening. And for those in Israel, I hope you have the good rest of the day. And for people in the United States, I hope you have a good day. And this week, I'm not sure if I can set the right time, but I have known the author of the book, Saving Grace at Guantanamo Bay, a memoir of a citizen warrior. His name is Montgomery Granger. He lives in New York. I have known him for a long time, and I started podcasts, so I asked him if he would appear on my podcast and talk about his experience and also about his book. And I hope to invite him this week, but it may be the next week because of my personal reasons. But it will be very hard for me to invite a guest this week. So I may be speaking only myself, picking up the topics, but I will arrange time for more guests next week. And I cannot talk about anyone other than Monty, I have to say. Well, but I have more guests to invite. Anyway, good night.